The last thing Queen Celira remembered was the sound. Not the roar of cannons, not the hiss of ruptured atmosphere. Those were ordinary noises in an empire that had been forged through centuries of orderly violence. No, it was the softer sound that ended her world. A single breath caught in her throat, a betrayal exhaled, then darkness thick as ocean silt folding over her crown. So when light returned, it should have been the hard, white light of the after, where judges waited with cold eyes and colder scales. Instead, it was amber, warm. It spilled across the curve of her eyelids like sunrise through honeyglass, and there was a scent strange and earthy like crushed leaves after rain, a living smell, not incense, not antiseptic, not the sterile, polished air of her flagship. Her eyes snapped open. For a fraction of a heartbeat, she didn't understand what she was seeing. A ceiling of woven panels, not metal, threads, not conduits. The gentle pulse of a lantern swaying somewhere beyond her blurred vision. And then, leaning into the edge of her sight, something impossibly soft. A face. A human face. He was close enough that Celira could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the way exhaustion had carved shadows beneath them. His hair, dark, slightly curled, fell forward as he bent over her. And when her gaze locked onto his, he didn't flinch, he smiled. Not a baring of teeth meant to warn, not the stiff courtesy of a diplomat. A gentle smile, like he was relieved she had returned from somewhere far away. "Hey," he said quietly, as if loudness might scare her back into death. "You're awake." Celira's throat burned when she tried to speak. She managed a rasp that sounded nothing like a queen. "Where am I?" The human blinked, then glanced toward a corner where something hummed, an improvised console, cobbled together from parts she couldn't name. "Safe," he said. "As safe as I can manage. Safe." The word made her chest tighten. Queens did not have safe. Queens had guard rings, weapon grids, treaties, things that resembled safety until someone decided they wanted her throne more than her life. Her fingers twitched against the bedding. Cloth, real cloth, not the textured polymer of military cots. Her arm protested with a sharp pain and she hissed. Instinctively, she tried to sit up. The human's hand lifted, slow, careful, palms open. A gesture she recognized from first contact recordings, "I mean no harm." "Easy," he murmured. "You've got a fracture in your side and something I'm still not thrilled about in your bloodstream." Celira froze. "You touched my blood." "I had to," he said, and his smile softened into something like apology. "You were dying." Dying, the memory hit like a hammer, the council chamber, the ceremonial blade meant for oath sealing. Her regent's voice for the stability of the throne, the sting at her ribs, the sudden cold. She looked down. Bandages crossed her torso in a pattern that was more art than medical standard, careful wraps that accommodated the ridges of her species' anatomy, the work of someone patient enough to learn while time bled away. The human followed her gaze. "I didn't have the right materials," he admitted. "But why?" Celira's voice sharpened enough to make him pause. "Why did you save me?" Because the logical answer was obvious: leverage. A living queen could be ransomed, traded, paraded. A dead queen was only a lesson. The human's eyebrows lifted slightly as if he'd expected that question. He rubbed a thumb along the edge of his own palm, nervous but not deceitful. "Because," he said simply, "it was the right thing to do." Celira stared at him. In her empire, right was a policy word. It meant alignment with law, with tradition, with whoever held the blade. But his right sounded older, like something carved into bone rather than written on paper. She tried to shift again and pain lanced through her side. A sound escaped her, a small, undignified gasp. The human moved instantly and Celira's instinct screamed as his hands came close. But he didn't grab her. He adjusted a pillow. He tucked a blanket around her shoulders like she was fragile, like she mattered. "I'm Eli," he said, as if offering his name was a kind of peace treaty. "Eli Mercer." Celira swallowed the ache in her throat and forced her mind into order. "I am Celira of House Vey," she said, "Queen of the Sorin 13. His eyes widened just a flicker, but he didn't bow or kneel, he didn't gape in awe. If anything, his face tightened with worry, like her title made her situation worse. "Yeah," he breathed, "I figured you were a tourist." Her gaze swept the room again, a small space, rounded walls, patches where metal plates had been bolted over cracks, a hiss of air recycling through a filter that looked handmade. This wasn't a palace. It was a shelter, a lifeboat. "Or where is my ship?" Celira demanded. Eli's jaw clenched. "Gone," he said carefully. "Or not here. I found you in the debris field, a pod half melted. If I hadn't been scavenging, you'd still be drifting." Scavenging. That single word told her more than 1,000 court reports. He wasn't military. He wasn't aristocracy. He was someone who lived on the edges of things bigger than him. You are human, Celira said, as if naming the species would summon the rest of it. Armadas, diplomats, the cautious distance between their worlds. He shrugged faintly. Last I checked. Humans and Soren were not enemies, they were not allies either, they were a question mark. A civilization too young and too stubborn, with diplomats who smiled like they had secrets and engineers who built miracles out of scraps, which made this even more dangerous. Her heart stuttered as another thought rose, sharp and cold. If you found me, she whispered, others can. Eli's smile faded completely. He stood and crossed to the console. When he tapped it, a dim projection flickered to life, a scatter of dots, a slow orbit around a dead moon. Among the dots, 3 pulsed red. Soren patrol beacons, Eli said. Not yours, not loyalists. They've been sweeping this quadrant for days. Celira's blood ran colder than space. The Regent, she said. Eli looked back. Is that the one who tried to kill you? Celira said nothing. Silence was answer enough. Eli exhaled, long and careful. Then we need to move. We, Celira echoed, and the old royal reflex tried to reassert itself. I do not travel with strangers, I command fleets. But the truth pressed in around her like the walls. She had no guards, no throne, no court. Only a human with tired eyes and a shelter stitched together from wreckage. Eli met her gaze. Yeah, he said. We. Celira's fingers tightened in the blanket. You understand what harboring me means. It means someone powerful wants you dead, Eli replied, and if they find you here, they'll probably kill me too. He paused, then added with a small, crooked attempt at humor, so I'd prefer they don't. She studied him, this human who spoke to her like she was a person first and a symbol second. Why not leave me, she asked. You could cut the pod loose, pretend you never saw me. Eli's eyes flickered down to her bandaged side, then up again. I tried that once, he said softly. The way he said it told her it wasn't about scavenging or war, it was about guilt. Celira's voice lowered. And what happened? I lived, Eli admitted, and someone else didn't. A memory of her own flashed faces of soldiers who had died with her orders still echoing in their ears. The weight of those ghosts had never left her shoulders. Perhaps leadership was simply the art of carrying what couldn't be put down. Celira drew a careful breath. Then we move, she said. Eli nodded once, crisp as a salute. Okay, he said. Rule 1, don't try to stand like you're not injured, you'll pass out. Rule 1, Celira repeated, tasting the strange notion of rules spoken to her rather than by her. He rummaged in a storage bin and produced a compact harness. It looked like it had been modified 10 times, straps reinforced, buckles replaced. I'm going to help you up, Eli said. I'll keep my hands where you can see them. You tell me if anything hurts too much. Celira's pride bristled, but pain made the argument brief and humiliating. When Eli's arm slid behind her back, it was steady, not possessive, not invasive. He moved like someone used to handling fragile equipment and fragile people. When she rose, the world tilted. For a second, she was back in the council chamber, blood on her ceremonial robes, the ceiling spinning away, death waiting with its patient hands. Eli's voice anchored her. You, he murmured. She didn't fall. They moved through a narrow corridor. The shelter was larger than the first room suggested, a web of connected compartments, each one clearly repurposed from something else. In one, Celira saw stacked containers with human lettering and Soren hazard symbols side by side. In another, a small garden, actual living plants grew beneath a lamp, leaves trembling gently in recycled air. Food, Eli explained when he noticed her staring. And it helps, mentally. Celira's empire had hydroponic farms the size of cities, managed by algorithms and servants. But this small patch of green felt more intimate than all of them. At the far end was an airlock. Beyond it, a ship, not sleek, not royal. It looked like a creature built from bones, sections of hull from different manufacturers welded into a stubborn whole. The name on its side was painted by hand. Saltwren. Eli guided her into a padded seat and buckled her in with gentle efficiency. Then he slid into the pilot's chair, fingers dancing across controls that responded with uneven light. The engines coughed, then they caught. A vibration traveled up Celira's bones, and with it came an unfamiliar sensation, hope strapped into machinery, shaking but real. On the screen, the red patrol beacons drifted closer. Eli's eyes narrowed. Hold on, he said. Celira's crest lifted, an instinctive flare of alarm. They will identify my biosignature. They'll try, Eli replied, but I'm not exactly flying a ship with a registration anyone trusts. He flicked a switch. The cabin lights dimmed. The ship's hum lowered like a predator flattening its breath. Celira watched the sensors with a strategist's focus. The patrol's sweep widened, tightened. One of the red pulses brightened. They are locking, she said. Eli's jaw tightened. Yeah. The Saltron slipped behind the dead moon, using its bulk as cover. For a moment, the patrol's signals blurred uncertain. Eli angled the ship into the moon's shadow where sunlight couldn't reflect off their hull. Then in the thin quiet, Celira heard something she hadn't heard since her youth, something that didn't exist in the polished corridors of power. Eli whispered, almost prayerful, come on, he wasn't speaking to gods, he was speaking to chance. The patrol beacon drifted closer. Closer, Celira's mind raced through options. If captured, she could offer herself as hostage to save Eli. If killed, her loyalists would fracture civil war igniting across the 13. Millions would die and her regent would call it stability. Her eyes flicked to Eli's profile, set determined, a human who had chosen to care when it was easier not to, and in that moment Celira realized something terrifying. This human didn't just save her life, he had placed his own beneath it. The beacon's pulse sharpened. A voice crackled through the comms, Soren language clipped and official. Unidentified vessel, power down and prepare for boarding by authority of the Provisional Regency. Eli didn't answer. Instead, he reached beneath the console and pulled a small device with a single red button. Celira's eyes narrowed. What is that? Eli's smile returned, thin and determined. A lie, he said, a really loud one. He hit the button. For a breath, nothing happened. Then the sensors erupted. A flare, false signatures, dozens of them, blooming like a school of fish. On the patrol's scope, it would look like an entire fleet had just emerged from the moon's shadow. The comms exploded with frantic Soren chatter. Eli shoved the throttle forward and the Saltron surged, not toward open space but sideways, slipping through the confusion like a needle through fabric. Celira's wound screamed. She gritted her teeth, refusing to make a sound. Queens did not whimper. Eli glanced at her anyway, as if he could read pain in the set of her jaw. Sorry, he said through clenched teeth. Do not apologize, Celira rasped. Fly. The Saltron shot past the moon's edge and into a debris belt, a chaotic storm of metal shards and ice. Eli's hands moved with impossible precision. The ship rolled, dipped, threaded between spinning fragments. Celira watched, stunned, as he navigated disorder the way her admirals navigated battle formations, not with dominance, with understanding. A large piece of hull spun toward them, too fast, too close. Celira's instinct screamed. Eli didn't flinch. He tapped a control and the Saltron fired a short burst, gas thrusters, not weapons, nudging the ship into the fragment's wake. It passed so close Celira could see scorch marks on its edges. Then they were through. The patrol signals faded behind them, lost in the debris interference. Eli exhaled, shoulders dropping a fraction. Celira realized she'd been holding her breath. The silence that followed was heavy with what might have happened. Eli finally looked at her, that gentle smile returning like a light offered in darkness. You okay? He asked. Celira should have said, I am a queen, I am always okay. Instead, she said the truth. I do not know, she admitted, but I am alive. Eli nodded, as if that was enough for now. That's a start. The Saltron drifted into the deep, away from beacons and banners, away from the neat certainty of court politics. Celira stared at the starfield ahead, endless, indifferent, beautiful. She had thought she died. Instead, she had awakened to a human smiling gently, and somewhere inside her, beneath the armor of titles and traditions, something long dormant shifted. Not trust. Trust was earned like peace, but possibility. She turned her head slightly toward Eli. Human. Yeah, he said. If you deliver me back to my throne, she began, voice careful, the regent will hunt you. Eli gave a small shrug. He's already hunting me, I guess. Celira's eyes narrowed. You will be marked. Eli glanced at her, then back at the stars. I've been marked before, he said quietly, by worse things than a regent. Celira studied him, then slowly lifted her hand, painful, deliberate, and placed it over the bandage at her side. A queen's wound, a human-s work. In the hush of space, she made a vow, not to a court, not to a ceremony, but to herself. If mercy can exist in a scavenger's ship, she thought, then perhaps it can exist in an empire. Her gaze fixed on the endless dark ahead. Then listen, Eli Mercer, she said, voice returning to its regal steadiness. We will not simply survive. Eli's smile tilted, curious. No, Celira said, and for the first time since the blade sank into her flesh, she felt something like fire. We will return. And do what? Eli asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Celira's eyes reflected starlight like sharpened silver. We will remind the 13, she said, what a queen is meant to be. Eli held her gaze for a long second, then nodded once. All right, he said softly. Then we start with staying alive tonight. Outside, the universe rolled on silent, vast, uncaring. Inside the Saltron, a wounded queen and a tired human shared a small pocket of light. And for the first time in Celira's life, power did not feel like a throne. It felt like a choice. Somewhere out in the cold between empires, a queen learned that survival isn't the same as victory, and that kindness can be a weapon sharper than any blade. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't a fleet, it's a human who refuses to let you die.